The sun was bleeding out over the hills when Elias Boone spotted her. A shape, small and low to the earth, dragging itself through the dust just beyond his fence line. His horse, Duke, stopped without a command, ears twitching at the sound. A sound too faint for most men to hear, a slow scrape like cloth against grit. The wind carried a smell of blood, faint but sharp enough to tighten Elias's jaw. The woman lifted her head, skin cracked from sun, hair matted with dust and sweat. Her eyes caught the last light, green and hollow. She mouthed words before her voice found them. "Just kill me fast." Elias swung down from the saddle, boots hitting the dry earth with a thud. His shadow stretched long over her as the dying sun burned behind him. She didn't flinch. She didn't reach for help. She only clutched the edge of her torn shawl tighter around her, as though protecting herself from the evening chill that wasn't yet there. The cicadas had gone silent. The whole stretch of land seemed to be holding its breath. "You hurt bad?" His voice was steady, but his hand stayed near the butt of the Colt at his hip. Her lips parted, but all that came out was a dry rattle. Her throat worked, and she whispered again, "Kill me." Elias knelt beside her. The dust around her was marked by long drag lines. She'd been crawling for some time. One boot was missing, the other half torn from her foot. The fabric of her skirt was shredded, snagged by mesquite thorns along the way. Without another word, he slipped his arm under her shoulders, feeling the bones sharp beneath the skin, and lifted her. She was lighter than a sack of grain, yet every movement drew a hiss of pain from her lips. The horse shifted, uneasy, as Elias laid her across the saddle. The sky was bleeding into purple now, and the air carried the dry, metallic taste of oncoming night. They reached the porch of the ranch house, just as the first star broke the horizon. Elias stepped inside with her in his arms. The floorboards groaned under his boots, the smell of pine and old coffee lingering in the room. He set her down gently on the old settee near the fire pit and fetched a wool blanket from a cedar chest. Her breathing was shallow, but steady enough. We draped the blanket over her. She winced and drew it close. Something about the movement caught his eye. The corner of the fabric slipped. Elias froze. Just above her wrist, half hidden under dirt and dried blood, was ink, a brand burned into the skin years ago, the lines black and cruel. He knew it instantly. A coiled rattlesnake with its fangs bared. The mark of the Red Butte Gang. For a long moment, he didn't move. The room seemed smaller. The crackle of the lantern wick was suddenly too loud. The woman's eyes fluttered open, catching the lamplight. For the first time, he saw something flicker there. Not just pain, but something darker. "You know what that means?" he said quietly. Her gaze didn't waver. "I do." Duke snorted outside, hooves shifting against the packed dirt. Somewhere far off, a coyote gave a single, sharp yelp before falling silent. Elias straightened, the blanket still clutched in one hand. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing in, the desert night folding around them like a trap. The woman didn't beg. She didn't look away. She only said, softer this time, "If you're going to do it now." Elias looked toward the window, toward the darkening ridges beyond. Out there, the land rolled on forever, but trouble rode it faster than wind. And if the Red Butte Gang was anywhere near, they'd be coming. The wind had shifted. It pressed against the windows with a low, restless hum, rattling the loose pane in the kitchen. Elias sat at the table, the lamp throwing his shadow long across the wall. Clara, that was all she'd given him for a name, sat opposite, wrapped in the blanket like armor. Her eyes never stayed on him for long. They kept flicking toward the door, then the barn beyond the glass. A horse nickered outside, but it wasn't Duke. Elias's head came up slow. He could hear the animal shifting weight, then nothing, only the creak of a rope in the breeze. "You expecting anyone?" Clara's voice was hoarse, but sharp. "No." He kept his gaze fixed on the window. The silence between them thickened. Somewhere far out in the hills, a dog barked twice, quick and clipped, before the sound was swallowed. He rose, crossed to the door, and eased it open. The night was vast and empty, the stars like pinpricks over the black cut of the canyon rim. The yard lay still, except for Duke, standing rigid, ears pointed toward the ridge line. A glow blinked out there. Faint, flickering. A campfire. Elias closed the door and set the bar across it. "You should sleep," he said. Clara gave a bitter laugh. "I stopped sleeping the day I left them." He didn't ask what she meant. Her fingers were working the blanket's edge, twisting it tight. For the first time since sundown, she looked directly at him. "They won't knock, Boone. When they come, it'll be like a knife through the dark." He said nothing, just crossed to the shelf, took down the Winchester, and checked the chamber. The metal gleamed dully in the lamplight. Hours slid by in the kind of quiet that carries weight. The old clock on the mantel ticked, loud enough to feel in the ribs. Outside, the wind died to nothing. Even the coyotes had gone still. Clara shifted in her seat, her eyes going again to the barn loft. Elias noticed, and his jaw tightened. "Something you want to tell me?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze lingered there a heartbeat longer before dropping back to the table. The lantern hissed. The shadows leaned. Then hoofbeats. Faint at first, like a memory. Then clearer, deliberate, coming from the direction of the ridge. Slow, measured. Elias moved to the window. Shapes emerged against the moonlit dust. Riders, half a dozen, maybe more, moving in a loose line toward the ranch. Their horses walked as if they had all night, as if nothing and no one could stop them. One at the front sat tall in the saddle, a dark coat hanging heavy off his shoulders. Even at this distance, Elias could feel the weight of his stare. The line halted at the edge of the yard. For a moment, there was nothing but the creak of leather and the distant whicker of a horse. Then a voice carried across the open ground. "Boone, we know she's in there." The words rolled out calm, almost friendly but cold underneath. "She's ours. You've got till nightfall tomorrow to hand her over." Silence swallowed the yard again. The riders turned as one, horses moving slow, deliberate, until the dark took them back. Clara's hands were trembling under the blanket, but her voice was steady when she said, "They'll come early." Elias kept his eyes on the empty yard. "I know." The first nail screamed against the wood. Elias drove it home, sealing the last board over the kitchen window. The lantern's light caught the sweat on his forearms, his shirt damp from the work. Clara sat at the table, the blanket now slung over the back of the chair, her hands busy loading a Colt Navy with quiet precision. Brass rounds glinted in her fingers before disappearing into the cylinder. "You handle that like you've done it before," Elias said without looking at her. "I have." She didn't raise her head. "More than I wanted to." Outside, the wind had died. The night pressed close, thick and breathless. Elias checked the Winchester, slid the bolt forward, and set it beside the door. His eyes flicked to her again. "You gonna tell me why they want you back so bad?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze fixed on the flame, dancing inside the lamp. "I took something. Not gold. Not silver." Her voice was low. "A ledger. Names, dates, every killing they were paid to do, and the men in town who paid them." Elias's jaw tightened. "Where is it?" Her eyes shifted toward the barn loft. The old clock on the mantel ticked steady. Elias glanced at it, then at the dark windows. "You could have left it behind." "I tried," she said, loading the last round with sharp click. "But the minute they caught me, I was dead. Better to keep the only bargaining chip I've got." The rafters creaked. Elias froze, head tilting toward the sound. Not wind. Not wood settling. Footsteps. He moved to the wall, hands sliding around the rifle. Clara was already crouched low, revolver ready. Glass shattered in the parlor. A bullet tore into the far wall with a splintering crack. Elias dropped to a knee, sighted through the rifle's barrel, and fired. The muzzle flash lit the room for a heartbeat, throwing Clara's face into stark relief. Sharp eyes, steady hands. More shots came, slamming into the boarded windows, sending wood chips into the air. The acrid smell of gunpowder seeped into the room. "Back wall," Clara called, firing twice toward a shadow darting near the porch. They moved like they'd fought together for years, covering angles, counting breaths between shots. Elias caught movement near the barn, two shapes slipping low toward the door. He fired. One dropped. The other vanished into the shadows. Then silence. Not the silence of safety, the silence of men waiting, spreading out, finding a better way in. Clara pressed her back to the wall, breathing hard. They're testing us. Next time, they come all at once. Elias reloaded, each round sliding home with a cold, metallic snap. Let him. How about all night? The first light cut across the canyon like a blade. Elias lay prone on the ridge, cheek pressed to the worn stock of the Winchester. The air was cold enough to bite, his breath a slow ghost in the dawn. Below, the Red Butte Gang rode single file into the gorge, their shadows stretching long on the canyon floor. The leader's coat flared behind him with each stride, his head turning slow, scanning the cliffs. Clara crouched behind a boulder, revolver ready, eyes fixed on a narrow bend where the sunlight hit hardest. The horses would be blind there. That was the kill spot. Elias's finger brushed the trigger. The canyon swallowed sound, holding it, waiting. The first shot cracked like thunder. The lead rider toppled backward, his boot catching in the stirrup before the horse bolted, dragging him out of sight. The gang erupted, shouts echoing against the stone. Clara stepped from cover, firing into the chaos, her shots precise, her stance steady as rock. Elias worked the rifle like a man born to it, each round deliberate, each impact final. He took the high riders first, the ones reaching for rifles, cutting their shots short before they could sight in. Dust boiled in the gorge, sunlight burning through it in golden shafts. Horses screamed. Men cursed and fell. One figure broke from the fight, charging toward Clara with a knife drawn. She didn't back away. She sidestepped, caught his arm, and slammed the barrel of her Colt into his temple. He hit the dirt and didn't rise. Elias's last round dropped the man in the black coat. The echo rolled away, leaving only the wind and the groan of dying men. Clara walked into the settling dust, boots crunching over stone. She stopped at the fallen leader, kneeling to pull a blood-stained pouch from his coat. Inside, the corner of a weathered ledger peeked out. She stood over him a moment longer, then looked up at Elias on the ridge. Her voice carried, even soft as it was. "You were the Widowmaker." Elias didn't answer. He only descended the slope, rifle in hand, the dawn washing his face in pale gold. When he reached her, she held out the ledger. "They'll come for this again." He glanced at the canyon floor. Bodies sprawled in the dust, the gang broken. "Not here, they won't." Clara's eyes softened, but her grip on the book stayed tight. Together, they walked out of the gorge, leaving the sun to claim what was left. They say the canyon's still quiet at dawn, like it's remembering. And if you pass by on the right morning, you might see two riders heading east, one tall in the saddle, the other with a Colt on her hip, and you'll know better than to ask their names.